Do you need reliable and secure IoT connectivity? Then Telia has you covered. Whether you're connecting 10 or 1 million devices, Telia's award-winning network and solutions are tailored to your needs. Trusted by their customers, connecting over half the buses in Sweden and millions of electricity meters across the Nordics. Explore more on business.teliacompany.com. Welcome, Adrian, to the IoT For All Podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. A lot of exciting stuff we want to get to today, but I'd love it if you might want to kick us off with an overview about yourself, your background experience, as well as the company.
As for myself, I've been, I think I'm coming up 25 years now in the real-time location business. So prior to that, I describe myself as a recovering rocket scientist in the weapons business. That got me sent from the UK to the US, and here I've been ever since, and got into this business around about 2000. So I've been, we've tracked everything in those 25 years. I've seen technologies come and go and come again. And got a lot of background and been with Cognosos here for the last 3 years. And Cognosos kind of came to my attention right at the time when, frankly, I was getting a little bit jaded on the industry and the technology. There were some clear gaps that weren't being filled. And here came Cognosos recruiting, and pretty intriguing with the technology that they were using, and kind of fitted where I thought the gaps were. So it's been an exciting ride ever since.
So tell us a little bit more about what Cognosos does and kind of the role y'all play in the industry and your overall focus.
So we are, we're about, as I said, real-time location solutions, and we have a practice in healthcare and a practice in logistics. The common thread in both of those is asset management, helping people manage very large fleets of assets. In healthcare, you're talking about mobile medical equipment, and logistics, you're talking about, we work with automotive OEMs, helping them manage very large fleets of finished vehicles and inbound parts. Well, we're also just getting into safety in healthcare, safety-related applications as well. And Cognosos, this is nothing new. We didn't invent this. People have been doing this for a very long time, some slightly better than others. Nobody does it so well that it's become ubiquitous throughout either of those industries. It's not been adopted everywhere. And the reason there's been some technology limitations, and Cognosos is doing different things with technology. Cognosos was born in an age of cloud and AI, and leveraged those tools to just do it in a different way. It didn't bring all the baggage from 10, 15 years of development. It said, how would you do this in starting in the new era, and found a much better way to do it, frankly.
Well, as you mentioned, you've been doing kind of RTLS for 25 years. Obviously, I've been in the space for 8 years now, and it's changed a ton, from 2016 until now. What is it about Cognosos and just the overall philosophy you all have there that is so different and unique and kind of timely for what is enabling the use cases of today in the automotive space, in the medical space, just with these technologies in general?
Let's take a little jaunt through history, shall we, to come to the answer to that, which is that it's kind of interesting with my background in weapon systems. A lot of this technology was developed out of the Second World War and that kind of era. How do you use radio signals to locate things? How do you navigate, find ships and all those things? So, and there are various ways to use radio signals to figure out where you are. You can use signal strength to do some rough ranging. You can do two-way ranging where you exchange a message. You can measure angles, triangulation. Everybody's heard of that. And those techniques haven't changed for decades and decades and decades. And every technology that came along leveraged one or another, or maybe a combination of those techniques for a very long time. And the problem is, if you try to do radio or wireless kind of location in a complex environment, the environment breaks it. It makes it worse than it could otherwise be. So complex, I mean lots of walls, lots of reflectors and equipment and blockage. So all these traditional technologies are made worse by the complexity of the environment. So as I said, Cognosos was born in the AI age and recognized that, look, this isn't a navigation problem. It's not a tracking problem. It's a classification problem. If I'm in a hospital, I want to know which room something's in. Well, which room something's in, that's classification. Well, guess what does classification really well? AI, machine learning. And everybody's familiar with a form of classification, which is image recognition. For a long time, AI has been very good at learning and recognizing different types of images. That's what classification is. Well, couldn't you get it to learn and recognize different rooms? Well, sure you can. If you have two things. One, very mature AI algorithms, check. And two, a giant cloud-sized brain to do the processing, double check. Tools that weren't available to the incumbents, right? 10, 15 years ago. These just weren't tools. And the beauty about classification is, what does it require? It requires a complex environment. It requires lots of variation. It requires the very walls and reflectors and blockage and complexity that hurts traditional systems. Those are the things that power it and make it good. So it was a very big change in just the approach to finding things that leverage these new tools and just does it better.
I've had the opportunity to speak with a number of people who have ventured into the healthcare space. I think there's been a lot of challenges over the years of doing business in that space for one reason or another. And I think technology, the maturity of certain technologies might not have always been there, or they chose the wrong technology to deploy in a complex environment like a hospital with multiple floors, lots of different structure of the building themselves, what the walls are made out of, those kinds of things. Also, what are they trying to actually track? So were the devices sophisticated enough to handle that? So I think there's always been some hiccups for a lot of these organizations. But where are we now with like healthcare IoT, healthcare AI? Where, just like at a high level, where are we now? We kind of talk about where we've been and some of the things that are now enabled, but just generally speaking, what does adoption look like in the industries? What are the leading use cases? What are the biggest areas of needs that or areas that these hospitals struggle with that are looking to IoT and looking to AI technologies to help them solve?
I do feel like it's at an inflection point now. If you look back, there's been steady adoption. A lot of the solutions that got bought maybe 10 years ago fell into disuse over time. I don't know what the number is, but a shamefully large percentage of RTLS deployments in healthcare, I think, are probably not in use today because they never kind of lived up to their promise. So, but that's changing. Bluetooth has become so ubiquitous and cheap that it is clearly a good source of raw RF data. And the application of AI to Bluetooth has created such a high level of performance that it delivers on real value that there has been this fundamental change in the way you can do this. You can now deploy solutions across an entire hospital for a pretty low price that gets you the performance that delivers results. And what people are looking for, well, healthcare's got some very well-established use cases for this that have been known and about for a long time. Asset management. How do you optimize how do you optimize not people's ability to find lost assets? There's this crazy myth that what's the value of a tracking service? Well, the value of a tracking service is finding lost things. Well, no, it's not. The value of a tracking service is making sure nothing's lost in the first place. It's making sure everything's in its right place. So helping people be pretty proactive to make sure, you have that, I've seen plenty of TV, the surgeon reaches its hand out and says, scalpel, and somebody puts the scalpel in the hand. Well, you know what? If you could reach out a hand and say, wound vac, IV pump, and it was always right where you wanted it, that's beautiful. And that's what that level of visibility brings. So there's that. There's all the use cases around monitoring workflow. We've probably all of us been in a situation where we've sat in an examination room. They drag you out of the waiting room. They sit you in an examination room, and you're sitting there by yourself, alone, and thinking, is somebody going to come and see me? Well, the curse of having a kind of a process optimization brain is, oh my God, how much is this costing? How many of these rooms did they have to build to have enough to sit me in it by myself for all this time? There are all those inefficiencies. So understanding the flow of people and assets and patients is critical. And sadly, the new priority application for these technologies in hospitals is around safety. For a long time, healthcare workers have been at very high risk of workplace violence. And it could be a patient, it could be a relative of a patient, it could be a colleague, it could be domestic violence that's come into the workplace. Lots of sources. It's getting worse and worse. It's very bad. COVID really created an acceleration. I think a lot of us thought that it would calm down when the world calmed back down, but it didn't. It's still getting worse and worse at quite a rate. So the ability to have people call for help, the ability to keep track of their location, to understand where to go to intervene and help them has become a lot of places top priority now. So the demand is on the rise. Hospitals are losing money. I think there was a report recently that something like, I think it was around about 40%, around about half of hospitals are losing money coming into 2014. So hospitals are searching for efficiencies, trying to improve safety. Technologies are maturing. We're at a real nexus.
Yeah, I think the technology part is interesting because I think that's where a lot of the hiccups were initially, and the hesitation was the infrastructure cost to set up something using like ultra wideband or something like that. It wasn't an easy process to do that. So now that Bluetooth is at a point, as you've said, to be able to enable these solutions to be built and deployed at a relatively low cost and pretty quickly, I think that allows hospitals to kind of get in there and really try things out, even in just a pilot stage before they scale, to prove that these things can actually do what they've been promised. And I think that's a big enabler for IoT adoption.
Huge, yeah. You're talking to a 20-year ultra wideband veteran here as well. So yeah, I know the pain. It's a fantastic technology. I'll always love ultra wideband, but it comes with a price tag. And it's not just the price tag. When you're talking about this infrastructure, and this is the same for ultrasounds, the same for infrared, it's the same for angle of arrival Bluetooth. These are all, and ultra wideband's in there too. These are all technologies that require a very large amount of infrastructure. The infrastructure does a lot of work, meaning it consumes power, meaning it either has to have cables run to it or is battery operated and creates a maintenance nightmare. So the cost, it's not just how much it costs to buy. How much does it cost to install? What's the disruption to install it? Crikey, running on a PoE cable to every device, that's a giant IT project. And that's why I think a lot of these fall into disuse over time. So what happened was people said, oh, okay, well, look, we don't need this everywhere. Let's just put it in the really critical parts of the hospital. Well, guess what? If you're trying to manage asset flow through a hospital, when asset flow goes wrong, their assets end up in places they shouldn't have gone. And who knows where that might be. You need a lot of coverage to do that. Safety, you need to cover every corner. And we're talking broom closets and stairwells and basements, right? And parking lots and pathways outdoors at 3 a.m. at the end of a long shift.
Those environments are very different to structure and what they're made out of. I was just at a hospital the other day, and the walls inside versus within a parking garage, many different stories. It's all very different. That must pose a ton of challenges.
Well, it poses a ton of complexity, which is a challenge if you're old school and grist for the mill if you're AI based, because an AI can learn a parking garage just as easily as it can learn the inside of the hospital. So it operates very well in those environments, but with the cost point coming down as well, you can actually afford to deploy it everywhere. Like a safety solution that covers 80% of a hospital is no safety solution at all. And bear this in mind as well, Ryan. Healthcare is not happening in the hospitals. exclusively anymore. There's a shift towards home care. You might go to the ER and get sent home with a box full of equipment and 2 nurse visits per day. So asset management goes beyond the hospital. Staff safety goes beyond the hospital. We are way beyond the era of, oh, I know it's expensive, but let's just do the ER and the OR and that'll provide an ROI. Not one anymore.
AI has become popular over the last 12 to 18 months, even more so than they have in the time I've been in the IoT space. What is it about AI that really has kind of unlocked a lot of these use cases and a lot of the potential for these challenges to be solved, when earlier in my experience with IoT in the medical field and healthcare space, these challenges were hard to overcome? I know you've already talked about things like the connectivity side, the cost and devices and so forth, but as it particularly relates to AI, what has that really enabled to allow medical IoT to be something that is more achievable now than it has been in the past?
So let me make a distinction as well, because I think of AI as kind of top-down AI and bottom-up AI. And top-down AI, I mean the way that people normally think about AI, the kind of the big data AI. What if you could throw an algorithm that could watch the weather and the stock market and I don't know, and then predict how many people are going to come in with a broken left ankle in the next 3 weeks. So, that big data AI is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is AI right in the depths of IoT, right in the sensors themselves. And what traditionally has been the case with IoT networks and sensor technology is, if you pay a lot, you get a lot, and if you pay a little, you get a little. So there's kind of a scale of, the more expensive it is, the more value you're going to get. That's ultra wideband is at the end of that road, right? It's about as good as it gets and as expensive as it gets. But neither of those, high value, high cost, has a marginal ROI. Low value, low cost has a marginal ROI. They both have the same marginal ROI. What you want is high value, low cost. And high value, low cost is what AI has brought to sensors, which is by far and away the most expensive part of enabling an IoT network in a hospital. They don't let me in marketing at Cognosos, but if I had my way, our marketing tagline would be Cognosos making shitty sensors awesome with AI. And because it's kind of what we do. It's like, Bluetooth's a good example. Bluetooth's cheap. Bluetooth tracking technologies, they're not that great. There's quite a lot of error, unless you go super expensive and high end. But if you can take AI and make those cheap sensors work as well as the most expensive sensors, you've broken that ROI paradigm. You've created that high value at low cost that is really the holy grail. So that's what AI is doing. It's processing right down in the weeds here. It's processing raw RF data from tracking reference points in a different way that gets incredible performance out of really messy data. And it's back to these environments, complex environments are just the epitome of messing up that raw data. It gets very nasty down there. If you're trying to do pure things like measure signal strength and time of arrival, the environment, all that junk that it creates just screws you up. But all that junk is exactly what the AI learns to do its classification problem. The difference between room A and room B next door to each other is huge. You can learn that. If you try to apply the same deterministic algorithm in room A and room B, you're in trouble, because guess what? They're entirely different RF environments just because of complexity.
Where is this all going? Like, what do you see as kind of the next phase of growth in the medical industry as it comes to adopting IoT and adopting AI? Where should people be focusing their time and energy? Where should people be most, excited about for growth in adoption here? Because I think that's what, you mentioned we're at a kind of an inflection point, and I think I've kind of got that same vibe from a lot of people. Is like, they got into the medical space with IoT solutions, and they kind of took a few steps back. We're like, maybe it's not ready for it, or it's too complicated to get into. But what is the future look like in that space, and what excites you all the most about it?
What really excites me, just as kind of a lifelong technologist, is we're just getting started with this. We're making leaps and bounds at Cognosos in terms of what we're doing with AI and on our R&D side, getting into deep learning neural networks now and applying that, being able to understand not just where people are, but how they're moving, fall detection. We can do with a very high degree of confidence right now. And we're just getting started. So that if you look at the kind of the technology slope of old school technology and where it's got to, and then you plot AI that's just getting started, we've polished and polished and polished that World War II technology to get the most we can get out of it. And we're just getting going with AI, and it's already reached performance parity. I'm super excited about how amazing this is going to get. And what I'm super excited about is it's all the same infrastructure. It's all cloud-based processing. We regularly improve tracking algorithms, hit upload overnight. All of our clients get an improved performance the next day because it's all in the cloud, right? The cloud's a big piece of this. So that's what makes me excited. Where's it going? What's happening is in healthcare as a buyer, I think there are probably three classes of buyer. The people that have bought RTLS and have had a bad experience, have looked around in the past and said, nope, this is not for us. Or maybe are new to this and are just starting for the first time. The first two categories, those people that have had a bad experience, bought and had a bad experience, or just never bought because of other people's bad experiences, they are taking a look again now. The need has never been greater, and they're finding a whole new set of solutions. So I do think adoption is really about to kick off. It is kicking off for us. I don't see anything new in terms of use cases. The use cases have been known for a long time. The market's been crying out for these solutions for a decade and a half. With the affordable high-value technologies that are coming online right now, people are actually starting to be able to fulfill the dreams they had 5 or 10 years ago. So where's it going? Where it should have gone 10 years ago is where it's going, with adoption really taking off, and with this technology becoming a must-have rather than a nice-to-have.
Bringing healthcare out of the hospitals and out of the doctor offices, I think that's going to be a big piece of this as well. Is how do you create a seamless experience whether you're in a hospital or you're not? Because it's going to allow them to potentially scale the ability to handle more patients. We're already seeing a big skew towards virtual visits and things like that, but how do you go beyond that? How do you utilize these technologies to provide better healthcare in a virtual setting? And I think that's something that's really interesting to kind of to be able to see as well.
Exactly. And as I said, as healthcare moves off campus and into people's homes, the problems of things like asset management and workflow efficiency and staff safety become huge. They become logistics problems. What's interesting for me at Cognosos here, you would think that our healthcare practice and our logistics practice are entirely different things. Well, they're not at all. In two ways, they're not at all. One, the task of keeping a clean room properly stocked with the right mix of medical devices is really no different than the task of keeping the rail loading buffer full of the right vehicles to load on the train tomorrow when it pulls in. I mean, that's the same problem. So they're similar in that way, but also as healthcare moves off campus, it starts to become much more like a logistics problem. It's your critical assets going out in the world, and that's what logistics is. So we're in a very interesting position where we're seeing a lot of technology bleed over between our two verticals in a really good way.
Well, Adrian, thank you so much for coming on. This has been an awesome conversation. We haven't really dove into healthcare in quite a while, probably because just the amount of conversations that we had, we're all starting into the same conversation around the hesitations, right? So now we're starting to see kind of light at the end of the tunnel of wait, this is actually achievable and something companies can really focus their time and do well. So they should kind of get back in there and really consider this. So for audience who wants to learn more about what you all have going on, maybe follow up on the conversation that we had today, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, find us on the website, cognosos.com. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Adrian Jennings.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to try to find a time to have you back so we can talk about the automotive side as well, because I think there's a lot of interesting use cases there.
Thanks, Ryan.